California's economic output is so massive, it recently surpassed Japan as the fourth largest economy in the world. It is the global epicenter of entertainment and wealth, drawing millions of tourists who come to walk over the stars paved into the sidewalks of Hollywood Boulevard. But just a few miles away, that wealth disappears. In a 50-block zone in downtown Los Angeles, over 6,000 people live in tents and on the pavement. This neighborhood represents a glaring contradiction. California possesses the resources of a global superpower, yet it struggles to address a crisis that exists right on its own streets. Since 2021, the state has allocated billions of taxpayer dollars to address homelessness. Despite these massive budgets, residents and business owners note that the money often disappears into bureaucratic pipelines without reaching those in the tents. This funding often flows to a mix of nonprofit and for-profit organizations. Because these groups receive money based on the ongoing needs of the community, critics argue the system is built to sustain itself rather than solve the problem. If the tents disappear, so does the funding. Those trapped here include combat veterans who lost their support systems, mental health patients with nowhere else to go, and families who were forced into the street after losing a job or falling into debt. Because Skid Row has become a primary location for services and food, other counties frequently transport their unhoused populations here and leave them. This has turned the neighborhood into a containment zone where money is spent, but recovery is rare. For many policymakers, the solution seems simple: move people into buildings. But those who have lived on Skid Row for years say the physical transition is the easiest part of the process. The standard strategy treats unhoused people like inventory. The logic suggests that moving a person from an outdoor zone to an indoor zone automatically resolves the issue. However, former residents describe a difficult psychological hurdle. Without addressing the underlying trauma of life on the street, many find the sudden quiet of an apartment unbearable, sometimes even pitching a tent inside the room because the floor of a building feels less safe than the sidewalk they know. This disconnect stems from the extreme isolation that often accompanies homelessness. When someone loses their connection to family and community, a roof alone does not provide the support needed to stay off the street. Housing can protect a person from the elements, but it cannot fix the mental toll of long-term survival in an environment like Skid Row. To address this, organizations like the Midnight Mission focus on long-term intervention rather than immediate placement. They operate as a community meant to bridge the gap between the street and a stable life. For many, the process only starts when they become, in the words of one former resident, sick and tired of being sick and tired. This internal shift is what allows a person to step inside a program and stay there. Once they enter, they begin a year-long recovery program. This time is spent breaking addictions and slowly relearning the daily habits required to be self-sufficient. This human-led approach is slow and difficult. It requires constant mentorship and personal effort, which is why simply handing over a set of keys rarely yields the same result. Leaving Skid Row behind requires a total psychological shift. It is a long-term commitment to change that relies more on human connection than a real estate transaction. Large-scale state systems often struggle to address the crisis because they prioritize the number of beds over the quality of care. Current policies often focus on the visible problem, clearing tents off the sidewalk, rather than the invisible work of psychiatric care and long-term addiction recovery. Real progress depends on local communities and individuals who are willing to spend months or years guiding someone back from the isolation of the street. Addressing the homelessness crisis means shifting our focus. We have to look past the logistics of building walls and prioritize the difficult work of rebuilding individuals. Behind the statistics of Skid Row are thousands of individual stories and human beings fighting to find their way back. If this look into the reality of the crisis was helpful, please share the video. Helping others understand the mental challenges of homelessness is the first step toward finding better solutions. Subscribe to the channel to support more stories like this. Understanding these issues is how we begin to create real change.